Hello and welcome to Hardcover Feedback. I'm Kelly Campos.
And I'm Brandy Smits. Today we have three exciting novels for you. The first is a steampunk novel, a new branch of science fiction. The second is a James Bond-esque spy thriller. And the third is a psychological drama. So let's see. First off, we have Whitechapel Gods by S.M. Peters. Whitechapel is a mechanized, steam-driven hell ruled by two mysterious mechanical gods. Mama Engine, a goddess of sentiment, and Grandfather Clock, a god of logic and precision. A few brave veterans from the past uprising have formed a new resistance against the oppressing gods and are gathering for another attack, armed with a new secret weapon that may finally free them or kill them.
And it is not my opinion that it can be cured. It can be. Winfred, with all honesty, it will be, said Bailey. Once we cast down Grandfather Clock and Mama Engine, once the Baron and all the rest of their servants lie burning in hell and Whitechapel belongs to England once more, then you will have your cure. They shook hands firmly and the doctor departed. Bailey stood a long minute with the door open, staring out. His gaze was drawn upwards, past the rotting rooftops of the neighborhood, past the gleaming cathedral tower where those most loyal to the Baron lived with the luxuries of health and security. He felt his jaw tighten as his eyes came to rest on the top of the looming iron mountain barely visible through the blackened air, the Stack, home to the gods and to the man who had betrayed his country and his kin to serve them. Yes, things would happen quickly, one way or the other. If all went well, the means to reclaim Whitechapel might be in Bailey's hands by dawn. If all did not go well, he and all the agents of the crown might soon be lying in oily graves. Aaron had gone tonight to steal a weapon, and he was 2 hours overdue.
All right, first off, I think I should give a little explanation about what exactly steampunk is as a genre. It's not necessarily new, but it's starting to pick up steam.
Right.
Anyways, it's kind of like if you took Victorian England and you gave Victorian England this really bizarre type of technology. It's a lot of like clockwork and steam-powered devices.
Right.
That
like
is
the technology that they had in Wild Wild
Wild
West.
Wild West
yes,
is the perfect example of
heightened.
steampunk. Right, exactly. And it's kind of a movement. People are dressing steampunk. They're making their own steampunk things. It's kind of like
There's
a role play
more
aspect
books and
to
more
it.
things that
Exactly.
are fitting into that
Books,
genre
movies,
now.
There's music. It's huge.
Right.
Whitechapel Gods is a steampunk novel, basically a story in which that the Industrial Revolution is happening in England. Everything's going great, and they're inventing so much stuff.
Something goes wrong.
Something goes wrong, and the technology itself starts gaining all of this power and decisions, and it's causing crazy illnesses that turn people into
And now this is where one of these things, it could be either way, like, because it could be specifically just that the technology gained its own sentience, or it could be that there are aliens involved that took over the guise of this thing. I'm not sure. That's one of my problems with the book. It's a little convoluted. Like, for me, I was halfway through the book before I could differentiate one character from another. Even though there's names involved, it just was very confused to me. Like, I'm like referring back, okay, who is Aaron? Who is this? Who is that? Like, I don't remember from one chapter to the next who's who, because there were so many names and so many characters that just kind of confused me.
I think that kind of goes along with the theme of the book, being as it is primarily about machines and technology. It's almost like the people were insignificant. You know them, and you know what they're doing, and you know that they have personalities, and you see them. Tom particularly is my favorite, or my second favorite, I should say. That's Tom is this really funny guy who is half machine now, and
because of the
diseases
that have come
called
on,
the clacks.
The clacks, yeah, where like parts of your organs are somehow replaced with mechanics, you know, which is just bizarre, you know.
But then, so I think that by having these characters kind of like as background, the plot, like the setting itself, the setting is what
pretty cool.
Runs this. It's all about setting. The descriptions are intricate and they're very visually stimulating in your mind. You know everything that's going on. It's frightening. It's a very frightening environment.
Yeah, you can visualize these large bruiser kind of police force that are totally mechanical and cannot be stopped. Right, exactly. The Boilermen, they cannot be stopped, and you can visualize that, and that's pretty frightening. You know, and there are scenes within here that are very visual, like you could see it as a movie and thing. But for me, those scenes were few and far between, and I had a very tough time connecting one scene to the other. Like, okay, what's going on? Who's doing what? It took me way too long to read because I kept referring back and having to try to figure it out so I didn't sound like an idiot coming on here talking about a book that I didn't get, you know?
That was my problem too. Like, I really enjoyed this book, but it took me forever to read, and I am not exaggerating. It took me weeks to read this book, and it was almost like I get a couple pages and it looked like I went back 50. And I'm like, this book is growing as I'm reading it. I don't understand. But it was a really awesome story. And it was and apparently it's a series. I found that out the other day. There's more, so that's exciting. But it was just, there was so much in it, so much to deal with and to understand. And
I thought,
the metaphors.
The metaphors. I thought there was a bit of lost opportunity in the way those metaphors were dealt with. The primary metaphors of Mama Engine and Grandfather Clock. It's like it's time and technology destroying these people's lives. Hello, what destroys our lives right now? The commitment to time and technology. Really, that's when people have a lot of problems nowadays. Usually you can trace it back to how they deal with one or the other of those two, you know, how they place their time commitments, you know, what they think is most important and deserving of their time, and how important they think technology is to their lives and things like that. So I thought that the way those metaphors were used, the two gods were really fairly removed, even though they were so oppressive. They were removed. You don't know anything about them.
Except that Grandfather Clock can see everything through clocks.
Right.
That's all you know.
That's pretty much all you know.
That's it. And that was, you know, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before the show. We started filming. You don't know anything because the characters don't know anything.
Right.
And the whole book is very ambiguous. And I think that Peters does it on purpose, because no one knows why this is happening.
Right.
And so why should we know? Right. We don't need to know because they don't know.
And that is where I disagree with him as an author. You know, which, you know, that's fine, that's your stance. But I think your readers need to know more than the characters know, because then they can say, they can have that moment of, oh no, don't open that closet door. No! Oh no, they did it. You know, and so they can have that moment. You know?
like that too, but I don't think it was, or we're gonna disagree. I don't think that I necessarily agree with you on that. I think it's very important that we don't know what's going on here, because it makes it more frightening. Is you don't know and they don't know, so you don't know if anything that they do is going to actually work.
Now, as far as that, I agree with you. As far as their plan and what they have to try to take these gods down, totally agree with you there. But as far as backstory, yeah, I needed to know where they came from, how did these two gods take this whole section of land away from the country of England? You can't just assume that people are going to say, "Oh, okay, this whole what?"
But they didn't
how did
assume.
that happen?
They tried to fight back.
No. I'm saying the reader is going to just assume, "Oh yeah, okay, that happened. That's fine." You know, you want to know something about the backstory.
I do want to know. And you know what? Maybe in the sequel it's revealed.
Perhaps.
But
you never know.
I think it was kind of important that we didn't know. So we'll disagree.
Yep.
But
and it's funny that we disagree so much on that one point, because we don't. We also disagree on the ratings of this book about that much. I gave it 2 stars. I couldn't follow it. I couldn't really get into it. The points I gave it were for the world building itself. Like you said, it was very visual. I could see everything. Some of the characters were okay, even though I got them confused for half the book. By the end, I understood who was who, and I was good on that. So I gave it 2 stars.
I gave it 3.5, and I probably would have even given it that extra half star if it was more readable. It wasn't very readable, but I enjoyed it, and I loved the environment. I loved the story. I loved the characters, even the little that we know. And if it was just a little more readable, I would have bopped it up to 4. And you know that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't. So there we go. I gave it 2 stars, and Brandy gave it 3.5 stars. Go figure. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back. Next up, we have The Gun Seller by Hugh Laurie. Yes, that Hugh Laurie from House.
Dr. House.
Thomas Lang used to be an officer of the Scots Guard. Now he is unemployed and drifting. But when he is offered a contract to murder a wealthy businessman, he politely declines. He goes to warn the target and is attacked by a tough already on the premises. There he meets the most beautiful girl he has ever seen and tells her a series of lies. Now Thomas is caught up in international intrigue, spying, violence, murder, and love.
Imagine that you have to break somebody's arm. Right or left, it doesn't matter. The point is you have to break it, because if you don't, well, that doesn't matter either. Let's just say bad things will happen if you don't. Now my question goes like this. Do you break the arm quickly? Like, snap, whoops, sorry, here, let me help you with that improvised splint. Or do you drag the whole business out for a good 8 minutes, every now and then increasing the pressure in the tiniest of increments until the pain becomes pink and green and hot and cold and altogether howlingly unbearable? Well, exactly, of course. The right thing to do, the only thing to do, is to get it over with as quickly as possible. Break the arm, apply the brandy, be a good citizen. There can be no other answer. Unless, what if you were to hate the person on the other end of that arm? I mean, really, really hate them. Now, this was the thing I had to consider. I say now, meaning then, meaning the moment I am describing. The moment fractionally, oh so bloody fractionally, before my wrists reach the back of my neck and my left humerus broke into at least 2, very possibly more floppily joined together pieces. The arm we've been discussing, you see, is mine. It's not an abstract philosopher's arm. The bone, the skin, the hairs, the small white scar on the point of the elbow, one from the corner of a storage heater in Gatesville Primary School, they all belong to me. And now is the moment when I must consider the possibility that the man standing behind me, gripping my wrist and driving it up my spine with an almost sexual degree of care, hates me. I mean, really, really hates me, because he is taking forever. Okay. The Gunslinger by Hugh Laurie, Dr. House himself. Who knew that he wrote a book? It was just one of those random things, found it.
That's right.
Had to read it.
Now, this is like a James Bond style book, you know, where he's a spy and all this other kind of stuff. He doesn't start off as a spy. That wasn't what his occupation was before.
No, he was in like, I don't know, the Scots Guard military or police.
I'm
I
not
don't know what that is,
100% sure.
but whatever.
But anywho, that's beyond the point. So he becomes a spy.
Right.
And it's complete with all the Bond things of all the girls and the guns and the fights and this and that and the humor. You know, he's definitely got the humor in there because, hello, it's Hugh Laurie.
Right.
I was really excited to read this book because of that, you know,
Me too.
because it was Hugh Laurie and because of the story style. I mean, who doesn't like a James Bond thriller? Well, I can't really tell you what it was about. Not because I'm trying to keep it secret or trying to keep the ending safe or anything like that. I just can't really tell you what it's about. It was
very.
There was a large story arc involving like gun selling, hence the name Gunseller, and like international militant groups which thought they were doing one thing, but they were really funded by somebody.
I think I have it.
Okay.
This is what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
What happened?
They were saying that the military of governments were starting wars to sell guns. That's the bottom line.
There we go.
That's what it is. Now, if you want to believe that, that's fine. I think you might get a little
conspiracy theory. Anyone?
Yeah, I don't know. They're out there.
Yes.
They are out there. But basically, he's sent to kill this guy, and this guy is supposedly against the government starting wars to sell weapons.
Right.
And so he doesn't know that, and I don't even know if he ever really knows.
Right. Ever really knows the truth of whether his daughter is in on it or not, whether was in on it or not, whether anybody was in on anything or not.
He might have been in on it. We don't even know.
But there's this thing called the graduate program.
That's the whole
that all
shebang.
of this is built around.
Yes.
And the graduate is a helicopter.
Yes.
that is like faster than any helicopter and
It has
quieter than any
two-
helicopter.
it has
and
two
has two fancy schmancy
spinny
spinny
things.
things and
Oh,
shoots
wow.
bombs
We're
or something.
Very spinny things.
Right.
Propellers.
Propellers.
Big propellers. Okay.
So that's what this whole
That's
thing
what
is
it's about.
They want to sell this thing, so they want to make a war so that they can show, oh, look how quickly this thing stops this war.
Yeah, it's so
well,
great.
They want to kill real people to sell this
and they
thing.
don't care.
And they
They're
don't
like,
care.
Whatever. We get money.
But within that, it's like, okay, does the girl really love him or not? Like, okay, you had dinner once and you kissed once.
And that's
Woohoo, you
all
know.
that Thomas Lang can talk about. The entire book is how much he loves her.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know
But-
that. Again, in a Bond movie, yeah, that
Yeah,
happens.
but okay, I'm sorry. I picture Thomas Lang like Hugh Laurie, and so I don't picture him like a James Bond because the voice of the gunslinger is so Hugh Laurie.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of parts where you're like, this is getting kind of ridiculous, and then like Hugh Laurie will jump in there with some funny comments of something, and you're like, oh, that's why I'm reading this book because it's funny, and then you forget again. But but eventually he's funny again.
I agree that the character has an amusing outlook on everything. He sometimes says things as the character.
Like the beginning?
The
Beginning is the best part of the book. That's why I shared it with you guys. So.
And that's something that reminded me of one of our favorite books, Sammy's Hill, that we reviewed on a previous show. And I might have even mentioned that on another show.
It's very possible.
Referencing
We really liked
Sammy's
that
Hill.
book.
I like that book. But that reminds me of the part at the beginning where she's got her arm in a sling and for no reason.
It's funny,
Yes.
but it's not always funny.
Exactly. And maybe I just expected it to be a comedy throughout, like a comedy of errors sort of thing, and it wasn't. And maybe that's why I was a little disappointed with it, but it's like the character was funny, but the book really wasn't that funny.
Well,
to me.
I think
it was
that's-
a
I think the thing
serious
is,
story.
We
sort of.
expected Hugh Laurie to be funny.
Right.
I mean, he's a funny guy.
Right.
He's crass, and that's just him.
Right.
And when it was actually a serious spy novel with a little bit of humor mixed in, I think
was
it
a
was
little
like,
disappointed.
oh.
Yeah. But his
Oh,
writing was good.
okay.
His
Yes.
writing was good.
No, it was. It was very good.
The story, I don't think, lived up to his writing. I
No.
don't think the story was as strong as it could have been.
And the characters really
the characters weren't as good, other than the main character.
Right.
So I only gave it 2.5 stars.
I gave it 3 mainly because of that opening part. I don't know why I love it so much. I've read it to friends and family. I don't know. I love it. So yeah, I had to give it 3. And I love Hugh Laurie. So
there we go.
he's so great.
So I gave it 2.5 stars, and Brandy, you gave it 3
3
stars.
stars.
And there we go. We'll see you in a
back.
couple minutes.
Welcome back. Our last book of the day is The Double Bind by Chris Bohjalian. When college student Laurel Estabrook is attacked while riding her bike through Vermont's back roads, her life is forever changed. Laurel begins working at a homeless shelter where she meets Bobby Crocker. After Bobby's death, Laurel becomes obsessed with Bobby's old photographs and his life before he was a homeless schizophrenic. Laurel believes she's uncovered a secret that no one is willing to admit to and is determined to find out truth at any cost.
I'm just curious, she began. What do you think? Do you believe Bobby took all those pictures? No question. They were all he had with him when he was brought into the shelter. The guy didn't even have any underwear except the drawers he was wearing, but he had those photos. But how do you know he was the photographer? He just knew so much. He could talk about Muddy Waters, blues singer from the 40s and 50s when rock and roll really began. I gather there's a photo of him and his band in that box. Bobby told me stories about taking his picture at one of the old Chess Records recording sessions. And another time he told me this incredible tale where he was dangled by some crane over a football field to take a shot of like 200 cheerleaders wiggling around inside of hula hoops. It was for Time magazine or something. No, that's not right. It was Life. He did a ton of stuff for Life. Did you ever see the pictures? He wouldn't show them to me. It wasn't safe, he said, looking left and right histrionically, pretending to check to make sure that no one was listening. Catherine alluded to the same thing. What was he worried about? One time, he said that something that led me to believe his paranoia went back to his dad. But it sounded like Bobby feared that some people who knew his old man were after the pictures.
I really enjoyed this book. Like, I did not expect to enjoy this book.
Same here.
This was one of those where we were just looking and we're like, meh, we haven't done anything like dramatic in a really long time.
Let's give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot. It was amazing.
It was very interesting. It was very good. One thing I'll say right off the bat is it reminded me in some ways of The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
Not because it was paranormal or anything, but because there were no false clues. And by the time you get to the end, you're going back and checking and saying, oh, yup, it's right there. It was right there the whole time. No false clues in the twist at the end.
It's very important.
Yes.
The ending is the part that seals the deal. And I was really confused, and I was like, what? No, it can't be. No. And I'm like, okay. So I go back and I look a couple things, and it all pans out.
Right.
So it wasn't a confusion where I was angry. It was a confusion.
Like,
I was
what?
totally satisfied with being tricked, and I have no problems with that. Like sometimes I get mad. Okay, I don't like being played, but I was at the end. I was like, wow, congratulations, you did a great job. Okay, but
now, as far as the trick at the end, I wasn't angry either, and it made sense. But the trick at the end made me dissatisfied with certain other characters in the book, and that's all I'll say because I don't want to take away from it. I was just like, but then why did they do this if the ending is this? Like, that doesn't make sense. Everything else made sense. Like, the plot made sense. But certain characters threw me off.
Let's give a little plot. So,
Yes.
Laurel, she was attacked in the woods. She turns really introverted, starts really working on her photography. She goes to work for Beds, which is a homeless shelter that finds beds for homeless people, like homes, like not like just like, oh, here's a place to sleep. They place them in apartments and whatnot. And Bobby dies, and it's her job to go through all his photos because they want to do a big gallery presentation
and give the money to the organization.
Right.
Because they're really good pictures.
Right.
Now, one thing that I absolutely loved about this is that the idea for this story came from a real person, a real homeless man who died and left these pictures. The story itself is not
real.
true.
Not real.
You know, that needs to be clear. It's not a true story. But the photos are what inspired this story. And they have some of those photos actually in the book. Now, my husband is a photographer, and he tells me that there's multiple stories that are like that, where they find these pictures after someone's dead, and they're like, oh my God, these are really good pictures, you know. So, so it's not completely unheard of for something like that to happen, especially, you know, in the days and age of now where everybody has cameras, you know. So, so that was one thing I really liked about the book, was how the pictures tied in with the story, and they're cool
And
pictures.
I don't know who really took the pictures. I'm sure it'll say
It
there has
says
to be a
in
photo
the-
credit somewhere, but they're really beautiful. But so, yeah, and basically the story is Laurel trying to find
piece
out
together these photographs
'cause
and find the truth.
she thinks he's somebody special. She thinks he has a special family background.
Right.
So she goes, and it's not really dangerous. I wouldn't say it's a dangerous exploration. It's just, it's a lot of leads. She has a lot of leads, and there's a lot of story.
Because Bobby was schizophrenic, correct? And so she believes that one of his stories was actually true. And everybody else is like, no, he was just schizophrenic. She's like, no, these clues are leading all the right way, and nobody wants to believe her. So, so it was very interesting. You're following along this mystery the whole time.
And she's totally immersed. And that's
and she gets lost in that. And that's where the story is how she gets completely lost and starts shunning her entire family, all her loved ones and everything, and getting completely lost in his world and these pictures and what happens to her after that. So,
well, like I said, I love this. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but I'm giving it 4 stars. I loved this book. I did not think I was going to. I had no intent to, and I think that's why I really liked it, because it was a complete surprise.
now, no, I don't know what happened to me, but normally you're much harder on books than I am. And
I am.
This one, I couldn't give it a 4 stars. I gave it 3. It was a good, solid read, but something about those characters I was talking about that didn't sit after I knew the ending. Then, like, as time went, I got more and more confused and more dissatisfied. Because when I finished the book, I was like, oh, okay, and I felt satisfied. But then a week later, I'm like, but wait a minute.
But it kept you thinking.
How come it did, which is why I kept it at 3.
memorable.
Because it would be a great book for a book discussion or
Yes,
something like that, because you could
absolutely.
keep going. If we weren't limited by
Actually-
not revealing the ending, then we could keep going on this.
I know
which is-
this one in particular, this copy has a reading group guide in it. So
Go figure.
who knows? You never know.
So
But,
it'd be
yeah.
excellent for that. So I gave it 3.
There we go. Let's do our little recap.
Let's do it.
Start out with Whitechapel Gods. I gave it 3.5 and Kelly gave it 2.
Next up was The Gun Seller, and Brandy gave that 3 stars, and I gave it 2.5.
And finally, we have the double bind. I gave it 4 stars and Kelly gave it 3. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you later.